Welcome back to Your 1230, the only podcast where our guests tell their story with the help of 12 questions in just 30 minutes. I'm your host, Mike Salitro, and today we are thrilled to be joined by Eric Wohlwend. Eric has been a full-time real estate investor for 20 years. He has repositioned over 1,000 units and still controls hundreds of single and multifamily residential properties. He has written multiple #1 best-selling books, including Family Success Triangle. He finds creative approach to make good deals great. Using what he teaches, both of his kids started buying real estate when they were 7 years old without any money or credit from their parents. Very well done. Both of his sons have purchased enough assets to be financially free before they were old enough to drive. The family continues to invest and travel North America, learning and growing together. Eric, welcome. We are really excited to speak with you today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, yes. Pleasure is mine. All mine, I should say. And I love that bio, one, for everything you've done, and two, for the inclusion of the family. What I wanted to start with, though, you talk about creative ways to have a deal go from good to great. How does that usually work, or how do you do that?
Everybody wants to talk about win-win situations so much that it's a cliche, and I really hate to say it. So what I do is I ask people what they want. And if you dig deep enough, you can really figure out a way to give everybody they want. And my kids pick this up, and let's start with a problem. You always start with a problem, and then you find a way to solve the problem. So one of my partners, we had just bought a 60-unit building, and here we are. We've got this, multi-million-dollar complex, needs all this work. He owns it for about a year and says, you know what, I really don't want to put any more money into this. And he is almost exactly 20 years older than me. So he's getting to that, I think I want to retire and sit back and collect money and not do anything phase of his life. So hopefully some of you can relate to that. Well, I don't want to take over the building on my own. It just doesn't make sense to me. He says, the only thing I really wanted out of this, now that this is going back and forth over multiple conversations over about 2 weeks, he said, I really just want the depreciation and I want to never have to put money into it. So we record a mortgage for all the money that he already has invested, and he's getting a nice chunk of money every month for that. He also is getting 50% of the property. He decides to sell most of his shares of the company. And I said, well, I don't want them. My tax bracket is just as bad for me as you. But my children, they are, wow, I think one was like 8 and 10. It was right around there. So they make virtually no money, which they did actually make more money, and they have been filing taxes since they turned 8 years old because they bought their first piece of property in their own company's name, which meant they had to file a company return and a personal return when they were 7. So taxes started about when they turned 8. And since they're in such a low tax bracket, making virtually no money, I mean, it's not like they have earned income at 7 and 8, more than a few $100s here and there. He sold the property to them, and I called up my accountant and said, hey, is this legal? How can we make it legal? And a few days later, he sends back with 2 highlighted versions of the IRS code and said, I'd probably use this one. And basically, he found a place that said, it is okay. You can give the depreciation to the seller, and the buyer can take over. So basically, each of my kids bought 20% of the company from him. So now the original partner is down to 10%, but he still gets his 50% of the depreciation, which is really what he wanted to begin with. That saved him, and I'm just guessing on this, but probably 10 grand a year for like the next 6 years. And then the children, actually, Devin paid $10,000 in income tax last year at 15. So, but at the first couple of years, it was just a few hundred to a couple thousand. So it made a dramatic difference in his taxes. And the kids only had to pay $20 to get 20 shares. Figured $1 a share, right? But then over the course of the next 6 years, he's making all the money and then some that he would have. So that is one of the creative deals we did. Now, most of the deals my kids buy, they go out, they work everything out on their own. That one, however, it took 3 or 4 of us working together to figure out what is everybody willing to give. This is a pretty big deal. How can we do this and really get everybody what they want? And so the kids, the building isn't great. We've put a lot of money into it. It's going to be a far, far better investment for them 10 or 20 years after we purchased it than it ever would be for my original partner. And it'll be okay for me. Like I said, I'm 20 years younger than him, but I'm 20 to 30 years older than the kids. So they're the ones that are really going to see the benefit from that.
Absolutely love that story. First of all, it certainly illustrates any way you talk about creative, how that was done to kind of solve your partner's problem and then to loop your family in and to get them a advantageous situation. Also leveraging the account, which is also always good advice to make sure that you're doing things properly when you can run it by someone who is a professional or more expert in certain areas. What I like a lot,
Absolutely. Always hire experts.
I really liked where you started there is find out what they want. Because a lot of times someone's position might be different than their ultimate interest, which it was here that there was something that kind of worked for everybody. So that story was really a great place to start because it illustrates all of those things. From there, I wanted to ask you, getting the children involved at such a young age, one, kudos, because any of us with children know it's tough to get them to listen to do anything, let alone something so lucrative and worthwhile. How much convincing, if at all, did it take to get them to listen to dad and then to kind of get on board with this lifestyle at a young age?
We didn't do any convincing. They just saw our lifestyle. We have a much different relationship with our kids. Yes, of course, I am the parent. I am the dad. I set rules. And I let them see the good and the bad of what we do in life. We travel. So many people have asked, how did you get your kids to do that? We almost wrote the book, How Did Your Kids Do That? It ended up to be titled Family Success Triangle. And that's the couple 100-page version of the answer to your question. We also travel all over speaking, an hour and a half at a time. So to condense this down to 2 minutes, we showed them the good points of real estate. We showed them traveling around in a private plane. We showed them, massive tax benefits. And when they first got there, when they paid their first tax bill, they understood just how nice it was to have write-offs and depreciation, especially these phantom write-offs that you're not losing money, but you still get a deduction for. They never really saw anybody go to work. I know a lot of your kids, the people listening to this, they will see mom, dad, or both get up and go to work every morning, or maybe your second shift. Well, their grandparents were more or less retired. All they remember is they were retired by the time my kids were born. And I haven't had a job in over 20 years. So that was 5 years before my first one was born. Mom hasn't had a job. Their mom hasn't had a job. She worked for a year or two longer than me. And now she has an office and she runs a real estate brokerage. But she goes in 3 or 4 days a week. If she doesn't make it in until 11 or 12, that's okay. It's just not something that they do where you have to go and clock in. They never experienced that. And they realized that running a business gives you a lot more freedom than having a job. So they thought, yeah, maybe this whole business thing and investing would be good. And the first one, he came in and asked me, he goes, hey, Dad, can we play? Can we play? And what do you tell a 3-year-old? He always wants to play, right? Said, hey, let's play that game. Remember memory? You take this piece of paper here, and if you look at the paper and match up all the numbers and click the box beside them on the computer screen, when you get down to the bottom right corner, if it's a 0, you win. And that's how I got him to reconcile my first bank account. And so he's reconciling the construction company's bank account, and I'm refilling my coffee. And he got to do something fun with Dad. It was like a game. Well, we did everything like that every single Friday night. We didn't sit around and watch TV. I didn't go out to the bar. We came home and we had frequently had friends over and we played the game Cash Flow. And from the time both kids were old enough to do math, they were sitting down playing Cash Flow with us. By the time he was 7, he went to the National Real Estate Conference, which, by the way, my family runs the Youth Academy at the National Real Estate Summit every year. But he went in, he was supposed to be 14, and I talked him into the class at 7. And I walked in a couple hours later and said, hey, I promised to come in. Is my son mature enough? Is he allowed to stay for the rest of the weekend? And the guy said, if you're asking, you must mean Devin. He's in the back corner teaching all those 20-year-olds how he kicked their butt in cash flow. I was like, that's not really fair. He's played every Friday night his whole life. So yeah, we made it into games. We played games everywhere we drive. We listen to podcasts, and he hears podcasts just like yours, learning about business, money, investing, or whatever it interests us at that time. And then he got to go to a couple of the places. George Gammon has his Rebel Capitalist. And we went to his live event. He met Devin, thought it was just awesome. And the kids both thought it was fantastic because they listened to him on the radio when we're driving. So meeting these people in person, Mark Victor Hansen, Frank McKinney, some of these rock stars out there, and getting to talk to them at parties and getting invited to dinner with them has just been awesome. And that keeps the kids more pumped up than anything I could ever do, just because we bought them a ticket and took them. I didn't ask, hey, is it okay if I bring my 10-year-old to your conference? Figured they're selling seats for a couple of $100. I paid a couple of $100. I took my kid, and they thought it was so amazing. And a lot of these organizers say, oh, wait, they're kids. They can come for half price or for free. And they have been invited to so many conferences. The one got an email, hey, we'd love to have you fly out here to Scottsdale and be in our group. And since you're underage, of course, you can bring a chaperone. So I'm just the tag-along chaperone. I only got picked because, well, I have a pilot's license and can get him there quicker than mom.
I mean, that's fantastic. What I'm writing down here is takeaways, is including them, let them see firsthand what you're doing, why it's important, how it's different from what they may think of, what they may see in school, stories they hear, other parents, other adults they see, making a game out of it. So it's fun for them still in a child way, but they're learning something. And then tying that fun to a lesson, to a greater good. Because yeah, it's easy to sit in front of a TV. It's easy to do things that don't have a long-term value. But if you put the time in and you say, this is fun, this is something that can be good for you, it becomes, I won't say second nature, but it becomes something they want more of, especially when they are going to those conferences, when they're seeing firsthand. And even better when they're schooling kids 3 times their age in the back of how to how to do anything. So well done, Dad. That's an excellent story to kind of show how the kids got involved. You mentioned the book, Family Success Triangle. Where does the name come from? How did you name the book? We'll start there.
All right, so it started with a bunch of tentative names, which tended to be awful, according to my publisher. And realize that it is really the integration of our family into everything in our life. That is really the essence of the book. It is, how did you manage to run? And we own about 20 businesses, hundreds of rental properties. And how did you do that and still spend so much time with your kids? We homeschool the kids. We travel with them almost 6 months out of the year. How do you do this? And in fact, one of my jokes in some of the classes I teach is they're not really homeschooled, they're more vacation schooled. I mean, my kids learned how to swim in a Marriott swimming pool at whatever hotel we were at. So the whole triangle part is, we integrated the kids into business. Devin started reconciling. That freed me up so I could play with him more. He was happy, I was happy. He got good at it. I started to pay him for it. Now, if the yard needs mowed, he goes and mows the yard. They build the fire, they chop the firewood, they wash the dishes, they do everything that is expected to live in my house and eat free food and have heat. But if you're working for my business, then I pay you a normal amount because I'd have to hire a bookkeeper to do it if you weren't doing it. So that is how eventually they worked up. And he actually had to learn cursive so he could sign a contract, because I wouldn't let him work for my business without signing a contract. So I've never given them an allowance, but I did hire them and told them, don't you ever get a job for money. You only work to get education. And if you happen to get paid too, that's a bonus. So those are the things. They worked on the business. I got to spend more time playing with them. The business did better. We bought more investments. We have more investments. The construction company and the real estate brokerage have more business. And the more investments we have, the more money we make, the more time we get to spend with our kids traveling. So everything leads together into a triangle. The business makes the family life stronger. The family life gives us, more money to invest. The investing drives our business higher. It's a positive feedback cycle that goes in every direction around the triangle. Hence the name, Family Success Triangle.
Beautiful. It's a great explanation. And one thing I didn't mention, but you also kind of give life to there, that we hear a lot, especially entrepreneurs, real estate investors, people that are doing really well, lament the fact they don't spend enough time with their family, or wish that they could, be home more, see their family more. What you've done here is manage to show, yes, you can do all the things professionally that you want and still include your family if you do it creatively, and you make it fun and you make them want to be there and have it. The reference said, I'm not at the bar. I'm not traveling on my own. I'm sure you do those things on occasion, but the priority, and that's really what this is prioritizing those three things: the family, the business, investments, and how can they fuel each other. So that's really well done. I think it's a lesson for a lot of families out there and a lot of busy professionals who would like to spend more time with their family. They can kind of integrate those things and see how they can balance better. So I love that.
That is so important. And I mean, my wife and I, we go out to dinner every Sunday night, because almost every Sunday we send the kids to grandma's. They get to see my mom every week for a day or two. And they had to stay home last night because we're speaking tonight. So there's just no way I'm not taking you there and going back, blah, blah, blah. So yes, the kids get to go to grandma's every week, which conveniently frees us up. We drop them off and drive straight to a restaurant. And my wife and I go out. And I never got into that label of, oh, let's have date night. But I realized I'm not happy if I don't get to take my wife out. Or more importantly, she probably pays most Sundays, so she gets to take me out every Sunday. I enjoy sitting around and having a couple hours to talk to her and not think about, maybe we talk about work, maybe we just talk about what's going on around the farm or the kid or whatever we want. There's no schedule. It's just spending time. And that's one of those things that you need to make time for your children. And I think a big problem that we're combating in the world today is dads really need to be there for their sons. It would make a dramatic improvement in the world if teenage boys had a father around. And I'm not just saying an absentee dad, but come home from work, spend the day Saturday doing whatever it is that you do. Even if they don't like it, maybe you're throwing mulch in your orchard or digging a hole. Well, you want to make it more fun? Buy a backhoe and let them dig a pond. We actually did that a couple years ago. So yeah, having fun with your kids. It doesn't mean you have to go out. And of course, we do a lot of good things too. Going to zoos, aquariums, all the normal things. We don't really go to parks because we basically live in one. We're out in the middle of the woods. So whatever it is that makes them happy. One thing I find a lot of parents say, hey, my kids all hate this. They want nothing to do with real estate. And it's a shame. But how many people own 30 to 50 rental properties and they live a good enough life and they go on a cruise with their wife whenever they want and they never worry about going out to dinner, whatever, but all their kids hate it, or maybe 1 out of 3 is willing to do something with it. And I decided I don't want to build this empire of hundreds or thousands of properties just to watch it be dismantled before I die. And my mom has, I don't know, maybe a dozen. And she's, attached to that 12 or 14 units. and said, Eric, you're going to have to take them all. I said, don't worry. Don't care what it costs. Just give all the other kids all the money and everything, and I'll buy them out. But nobody wants the real estate in my family except for me. And that seems daunting to them. To me, it's a little teeny whatever. But it would kill my mom if I sold one of her houses that she works so hard to buy it, fix it up. She's in there doing all the decorating, and her husband's doing this work and controlling the contractors, and that's been a major part of their life, especially since they retired. That they don't want to see their legacy go away. And so many parents that I worked with that are my age or 10 to 20 years older, they were watching their kids just sell all. I was watching them sell all their properties to me because their kids didn't want them. And I never really cared if my kids took over my properties. I just wanted to make sure that they were capable of running the company if they wanted, or even hiring a CEO to run the company. And they just didn't dismantle it. I mean, with this much passive income, all the great tax benefits, the stepped up depreciation when mom and I are gone, how awesome would that be to step into that? And I didn't want them to be the trust fund babies. That was another big worry. So I made sure they got out on the job sites. I made sure they learned everything all the way through. And I didn't make them spray for bed bugs. I don't make them drive around collecting cash rents. Oh, they're not old enough to drive yet, so that would be hard. I tell them, run it as a system, own it in a company, have your tenants mail you the rent, hire people to do showings. Half of them aren't going to show up, so call in advance, write a system and enforce the system. And Ethan had just learned a sidekick and bought his first 6-unit building, and it had water damage, got a great deal. Guy quit paying. 2 units were totally destroyed from water. Well, you have a lot of deconstruction. So here I have a 7-year-old who goes in and kicks down all the drywall and just has a blast. And he got to help fix up his own apartment building. And then he got to meet the contractors and talk to them and figure out, as I gave a scope of work, what we do here so they don't just go overboard and spend an extra 20 grand on something. So yeah, show them the fun things. Let them do the fun things, and don't make them do things that you hate, like sanding drywall and spraying for bugs, or maybe bookkeeping. My kids like bookkeeping. I know a lot of people that are thinking, man, I'd much rather sand drywall than do all that bookkeeping. Figure out what they like and give them a job. And if they're working for your business, they should be paid equivalent with what you pay other people in the business if they're getting as much work done.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's another wonderful answer, because starting off with figure out what's fun, make them happy, because the last thing you want to do is build something that's just going to get taken apart, ignored, or worse, somewhere in between. To have them involved, have it fun for them. Don't give them the last activities. Don't give them, nobody else wants to do this, so here you go, kids. Find out what they're good at, where their interests are, and have them build on it. And it's using the example of your mom and her properties, that being able to have kind of a soft landing spot, and then still you've got your brothers and sisters not as interested in it, that it's something that you're going to add to your portfolio and bring into your family as well. So another really great example there of how if you find the right, we'll call it niche, but the right business, the right investment vehicle, it's something that can give value to your family in multiple different ways. So extraordinary examples. Thank you for sharing those. But how did you get started in real estate investment to start? You mentioned your mom has properties, but how did you know this is what you wanted to do?
I was reactivated by the Army right after 9/11, and I had a private who said, Sergeant Wohlwend, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. And I won't tell you exactly what I told her in military form, but it was something about her sitting in a snowbank for the rest of her shift if the name of it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And said, my mom's been trying to get me to read that stupid book for years. So here we are about 5 years after it's been published, and I finally read it just to shut her up. Thought, my God, this is the best book I've ever read. And then I went out and read everything else Kiyosaki ever wrote. And I had a 40-minute drive to get to the Arsenal every day and a 40-minute drive home. And I listened to cassette tapes, which for all of the millennials out there, that's what we used to call podcasts. And but we'd listen to these things on cassettes and CDs every day driving to and from work. And I'm in charge. I mean, I have a bunch of more or less mature adults working for me that look at your picture on your ID, check underneath for a bum, open a gate, close a gate, and repeat. And we do that 6.5 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only thing I need to be there is to verify the radio and the landline works. And I spend the rest of the time reading a book or occasionally opening the gate so they don't have to every time. So I read a lot of investment books. And then right before that ended and I went back to one weekend a month, I decided to buy my first rental property. I thought, hey, I'm smart enough. I read enough books. I can do this. Next thing you know, I say I lost 3 jobs in 2 years. That would be the third one, because working 6 days or 7 days a week, you can support a family. Working 2 days a month, you definitely cannot. So I rushed out. My last day in the Army until I went back to the reserve was Monday. Monday afternoon, I was pre-approved for a loan. I found the property on Thursday, had an acceptor offer by Friday.
Wow.
That was my second single family home. 2 years later, I had 20 units. There's at least a 4 unit and some other stuff in there. And then fast forward, now I buy anywhere from 20 to 100 a year, every year for the last 20 years. And just started by reading books, which is why the whole family is so interested in writing books. Every morning we wake up, no matter what's going on, and we read for a half an hour, sitting either in the library or if it's colder, we sit in front of the fire in the living room. And we just sit there for a half an hour and we all read together. One of the family things we do.
I know for my family, I'm going to model a lot of, my kids are a little bit younger. I'm going to model a lot of these behaviors because I just love the results that you've had and I love the foundation they've been built on. So we are going to, of course, recommend Family Success Triangle, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. What else can somebody do if they want to get started in real estate?
Well, specifically for you, I would say that you could find a kid that's already doing what they are doing. I don't know the age of yours, but The Treehouse was written by Ethan, and Devin wrote The Garage. This is actually his second book, and the third one, which is the second in this series, should be out. He has to re-edit one chapter, then we get illustrations done. But The Garage and Treehouse are awesome books for anywhere from about 8 years up. I mean, if you sit and read it to them at any age. I remember my dad reading The Boxcar Children to me when I was really little. And these are fun books that teach 2 or 3 lessons at least, the same lessons we teach in our book from a younger kid's point of view. And just an awesome way. And of course, it's all about the drama of high school and, you know, a girl that kind of likes him and he doesn't know if that's cool or awful. And, you know, all the stuff that goes on into teenage books.
So we will we'll include links to all those books in the show notes for sure. We spent a good amount of our time talking about your professional background, what you do with your family. You've hinted at a few of the things that you do for fun or in your spare time, if there is any spare time. It seems to all be intertwined and built really well. But I'm going to let you pick between travel and you mentioned you've got your pilot license, so I'm sure you are traveling there and speaking. How do you spend time when you're either on your own or if it's completely separate from your professional endeavors? What do you prefer to do?
My favorite pastime is probably flying. I mean, I'm taking a friend back to North Carolina on Thursday, back home Thursday night. On Sunday, we fly out to New Mexico. Monday, I'll be in San Diego, stopping in Scottsdale for a couple of days on the way back at the end of the week. Then we're back in Ohio for a few weeks. Then we're back out to Phoenix. But I like to travel and I hate commercial airlines. Ever since I had a disagreement with United and they drug me off the plane. I decided not to do that anymore. And
Okay.
I bought a bigger pressurized airplane so now I can go where I want. And I also have a little one just to go out and have fun with. And the kids love, especially Ethan, loves to fly that one with me. So yeah, that is what I do for fun. We also have a pond and an orchard and a farm and ride four-wheelers and shoot everything you can imagine. And my wife loves archery, so she's out at the range every Wednesday. So we get out in the outdoors and have fun there too.
Okay. You've done nothing but an excellent job of telling us what you have done to build up a successful investment business, how you've written books that talk about those stories. So all our listeners, check those out. Your children have done the same. Check those books out, and how you've incorporated your family in all of these things. I feel like we've done a pretty good job of covering most of that. But is there something that I have actually? Yes, I just thought of it. I want to ask you: people traveling with their families, with their kids. You've done it since they were young. Is there any advice or any tips that might not be kind of top of mind, but since you've done it and done it well, that you could recommend? If I'm traveling with my family, I should know this.
We are open. I know a lot of people would go nuts if they were in that close of proximity to each other. You have to know when it's time for them to have their own private time. And so, we have a suite. All right, go lock yourself in the bedroom or whatever, or go to the pool. And Ethan loves swimming much more than any of us. I'll soak in the hot tub, but we'll send him down to the pool and he'll be there for hours. So we also have our apart time. But I think you really hit on the most important thing. Know what's most important in your life. We call them the big rocks. And once you figure out what that is, and it's me going out with my wife on Sunday night, it's me being there for my kids. And at the same note, they know don't bother me Monday morning because I'm going over payroll. I'm doing all the billing. I'm making sure checking up is the most important day. And so I got up this morning. I did my half-hour reading, also a big rock in our life. I did all of the stuff I need to make sure the companies go on for the next week. And now I can talk to you and go speak and do whatever else I want. So yeah, prioritize, 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 and then integrate everything you can into each other. And your family will grow together instead of growing apart.
Absolutely, and the integration piece, and the notes I wrote down that I wanted to highlight because it's really good advice. The systematizing what you're doing because you don't want to have to repeat anything, and that's the best way to build businesses that are going to integrate with each other. And we referenced it a couple times, but just to say clearly, hiring the experts or not, not being the only person to do things. That there are people that can do things you don't like, don't want to do, don't have time to do, or are better at us at doing them, or may have more knowledge. So wonderful advice there. Eric, anything I didn't ask you today that I probably should have?
I think we hit a lot of good topics. So just to say again what you just said, hire people. And for all of you out there that say, well, nobody will ever care as much as me, they'll never do as good as me, that's correct. A lot of people won't. Sometimes you'll have to hire 2 or 3 people to replace one part of your job. And you will never own 1,000 rental properties or run a successful business or have plenty of time with your family if you are there working 20 hours a day.
And that's both sides of the coin. That yes, no one will do the same job that you are, but if you want to get to those other things, you're going to have to let go and find alternative ways. So, Eric, I love it. This has been wonderful. Thank you for joining us. Where can our listeners? We'll post all the information in the book, all the books. Where can they connect with you or learn more if they'd like to?
On Instagram and YouTube and Rumble, we are at Real Power Family. You can go to our website, clearskytrainer.com. And we have a free newsletter every Wednesday. It comes out. We have links to the books, and your podcast will absolutely be linked there with many others that I am on. And the whole family is on podcasts. So if you say, no, I'd rather listen to the kids' point of view, click on theirs, not ours.
All right, excellent. So we'll include that in the notes. Eric, this has been an absolute blast and a pleasure of mine. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.